A clear distinction can therefore be made between these two forms of pain. Egotistical pain in connection with the elderly, pain fraught with compassion in connection with little children. The child lives on in us, and we actually feel what he feels. In reality, our own soul mourns only for those who died in the later years of their life. It is a matter such as this that can show us the immense significance of knowledge of the spiritual world. For you see, a religious service for the dead can be adapted in accordance with these truths. In the case of a child who has died, it will not be altogether appropriate to emphasize the individual aspect. Because the child lives on in us and remains with us, the service of remembrance should take a more universal form, giving the child, who is still near us, something that is wide and universal. Therefore, in the case of a child, a simple ceremony in the service is preferable to a special funeral oration. The Catholic ritual is better here in one respect, the Protestant in the other. The Catholic service includes no funeral oration, but consists of ceremony, ritual. It is general, universal, alike for all. And what can be alike for all is especially good for children. But in the case of one who has died in later years, the individual aspect is more important. The best funeral service here will be one in which the life of the individual is remembered. The Protestant service, with the oration referring to the life of the one who has died, will have great significance for the soul. The Catholic ritual will mean less in such a case. The same distinction holds good for all our thoughts about those who have died. It is best for a child when we engender a mood of feeling connected with him. We try to turn our thoughts to him, and these thoughts will draw near to him when we sleep. Such thoughts may be of a more general kind, such, for example, as may be directed to all those who have passed through the gate of death. In the case of an elderly person, we must direct our thoughts of remembrance to him as an individual, thinking about his life on earth and of experiences we shared with him. In order to establish the right contact with an older person, it is very important to visualize him as he actually was, to make his being come to life in ourselves, not only by remembering things he said, which meant a great deal to us, but by thinking of what he was as an individual and what his value was for the world. If we make these things inwardly alive, they will enable us to come into connection with an older person who has died, and to have the right thoughts of remembrance for him. So you see, it is important to know what attitude should be taken to those who have died in childhood and to those who have died in the later years of life. Just think what it means at the present time, when so many human beings are dying at a comparatively young age, to be able to say to oneself, they are really always present, they are not lost to the world. I have spoken of this from other points of view, for such matters must always be considered from different angles. If we succeed in becoming conscious of the spiritual world, one realization at least will light up in us out of the deep sorrow with which the present time is fraught. It is that because those who die young remain with us, a living spiritual life can arise through community with the dead. A living spiritual life can and will arise if only materialism is not allowed to become so strong that Ahriman is able to stretch out his claws and gain the victory over all human powers. Many people may say, speaking purely of conditions on the physical plane, that indications such as I have been giving seem very remote. They would prefer to be told definitely what they can do in the morning and evening in order to bring themselves into a right relation with the spiritual world. But this is not quite correct. Where the spiritual world is concerned, the first essential is that we should develop thoughts about it. And even if it seems as though the dead are far away, while immediate life is close at hand, the very fact that we have such thoughts as have been described today, and that we allow our minds to dwell on things seemingly remote from external life, this very fact uplifts the soul, imparts to it spiritual strength and spiritual nourishment. Do not therefore be afraid of thinking these thoughts through again and again, continually bringing them to new life within the soul. There is nothing more important for life, even for material life, than the strong and sure realization of communion with the spiritual world. If modern people had not lost their relationship with spiritual things to such an extent, these grave times would not have come upon us. Only a very few today have insight into this connection, although it will certainly be recognized in the future. Today people think, when a human being has passed through the gate of death, his activity ceases as far as the physical world is concerned. But indeed, it is not so. There is a living and perpetual intercourse between the so-called dead and the so-called living. These who have passed through the gate of death have not ceased to be present. It is only that our eyes have ceased to see them. They are there in very truth. Our thoughts, our feelings, our impulses of will are all connected with the dead. The words of the gospel hold good for the dead as well. The kingdom of the Spirit cometh not with observation. That is to say, external observation. Neither shall they say, Lo here, lo there, for behold, the kingdom of the Spirit is within you. We should not seek for the dead through externalities, but become conscious that they are always present. All history, all social dynamics, all ethical life proceed by virtue of cooperation between the so-called living and the so-called dead. The whole human being can be infinitely strengthened when he is conscious not only of his firm stand here in the physical world, but is filled with the inner realization of being able to say of the dead whom he has loved, They are with us. They are in our midst. This, too, is part of a true knowledge and understanding